You're listening to Tehachapod with Key Budge, Corey Costello, and Greg Garrett.
Welcome to another episode of Tehachapod. Key Budge, Greg Garrett, Corey Costello. We're all in the studio together. We've got a special guest on the phone. We are talking with Cal Rossi from Southern California Edison. Cal, welcome to Tehachapod.
Well, thank you for having me. I know we've been talking about this for a few weeks now, and it's certainly a pleasure to join you today, and hopefully we can have a meaningful discussion about what we're doing, particularly as we enter wildfire season or the official start of it. So thank you for having me.
I know this was one thing that, like you said, we've talked about. We really want to get this information out. We had a town hall earlier in the year, which kind of prompted the conversation. We had the PSPS events that took place in October that impacted our entire zip code at different levels. So we really appreciate the fact that you were available for this discussion because it's important to the entire Tehachapi area.
And it might be a good point to bring up that we are going to be hosting a virtual meeting this year. COVID-19 has obviously impacted how we do business. And as much as I would love to get together with your constituents and our customers in person, this year it's going to have to be via live stream, and that is scheduled for June 24th, 6 to 7:30. And I would encourage listeners to this podcast to keep an eye out for customer notifications. We'll also obviously be working with the city of Tehachapi and the local Chamber of Commerce to make sure people are aware of that opportunity. During that meeting, we'll be going over our 2020 wildfire mitigation plan in its entirety.
Cal, that's good information. We'll repeat that at the end of the show. But this is Greg, and thank you for joining us today. So PSPS is a reminder, public safety power shutoffs. It seemed like it was just yesterday, but between last year, excuse me, the shutoffs and now we've had so many other things, pandemics, earthquakes, fires, floods, whatever. But PSPS is coming back, right? And so we want to talk a little bit about what we learned and how we're going to move forward as a city and a community, and what has SCE been able to accomplish. Two things come to my mind. One is communications. The communications during the PSPS last year events were, yet to be desired. That's for sure. And we learned a lot, and we want to make sure that we get information out in a timely manner, but also the upgrades to the power grid here in Tehachapi so that we can help mitigate those power shutoffs. So maybe first we start talking about the communications aspect. What has SCE done to be able to communicate better with its customers?
Well, we have really tried to create a one-stop shop for communications, and it's not only tightening up our communications on our end, but really key to a lot of this, as when you're in a PSPS event, there is we start talking 72 hours with our first responders. 2 days out, we start our customer communications, and then there's a 24-hour notice and an imminent. We struggled with that a little bit last year, as you know. But I think the key to making this work is I would just encourage all the listeners and your constituents and our customers to make sure that you register online for our outage communication. I talked a little bit about a one-stop shop. For website improvements, we have a dedicated PSPS page. We have fire, weather, and PSPS information on there. We've increased our capacity to handle website visits. We've improved our maps, and you can now look up PSPS events and statuses by address. The maps show locations of community resources. If we deploy community crew vehicles, we have 2 of those actually in the Tehachapi district. And then we've been working with the Kern County Office of Emergency Services on location community centers that can be activated during potential PSPS events. On this one-stop page, You can sign up for the notifications. Again, you get the situational awareness. There's a host of information about preparedness, vegetation management, rebates, and then there's social media. And that's all on SCE.com/wildfire.
So SCE.com/wildfire. So we're going to hold you to this,
Yes.
right? Last year, there was lots of confusion, unnecessary, right? And we were trying so hard to help you, SCE, out. And so it sounds like you have committed a lot of resources, a lot of people. The company learned their lesson, if you are lessons. It's going to be better this time around, right?
Well, and obviously that is the goal. And I would say that, generally speaking, I think that the town hall that we held in Tehachapi last year, I think was valuable from an SCE management perspective. I think it's always good to get out and hear firsthand from our customers how our policies and procedures are working or not. I think also I would just say that the city of Tehachapi has been very, very good to work with. I think that there's a broad understanding of the larger goals. But frankly, when we get it wrong, you, Greg, and the city have held us accountable, and we've learned a lot from that dialogue and your efforts to hold us accountable when we didn't get it right. Thank you for that.
I want to talk a little bit too, Cal, before we get into the sort of grid hardening measures. Obviously, communication is important, but what data is being communicated, I think, is important as well. I think, last year there was probably a lack of knowledge of from down in Southern California what Tehachapi was really like. It was a weather model, and then it was just a lot of decisions were made on that. But I noticed you and your crews over the last year have put up, monitoring stations here locally. We see those things on some of the poles along with the grid hardening aspect. So how's the data changed? And I understand you also have the potential of having some more local input now into those decisions in Southern California. So what data is going to be sort of transmitted and communicated from the Tehachapi area to the folks making the decisions about power shutoffs or not?
We've done quite a bit of work in the realm of situational awareness, if you will. I mean, we have a new supercomputer. We've tried to improve on the data going in, and with that I'm talking, not just wind, but humidity levels, fuel moisture content. But I think to get to the heart of your question, the best situational awareness we have are our boots on the ground, our folks in the district. And in response to some of the concerns that were expressed by the city of Tehachapi, there was a pretty exhaustive effort that's gone into developing circuit action plan. So some of those issues that were brought up last year, Greg, by you specifically, are included in those circuit action plans. So if you have a potential PSPS, some of that district data is available to our incident management team, so they can make sure that they're making decisions based on intelligence from the ground. And of course, there is communication with our crews with handheld weather stations. But that's something we continue to work on to make sure that those lines of communication between our incident management team and our field crews are where they need to be.
I mean, that's good to hear, because that was probably, at least from my end on the communication side that I handle, that was really frustrating to know what was being talked about here locally, but the decisions being made down in Rosemead and Irwindale didn't coincide with what the actual, what the weather was. So it's nice to hear.
And I will tell you, Keith, that we just had a meeting a couple of days ago with the Kern County Office of Emergency Services to brief them on our 2020 mitigation plans. And some of the issues brought up were, not only the circuit maps, but we've asked the Kern County Office of Emergency Services to help us on the description. So when we're posting information on the website, the descriptions are in a language that locals will be familiar with and understand, to try to tighten up some of those gaps that we experienced last year.
Yeah, that'll be nice. I know that when we talked during these events last year, you understood, but when I had conversations with people down in Irwindale and Rosemead, they didn't kind of get the layout of what they were impacting.
And Cal, where is Rosemead or Irwindale? Where is the weather monitoring?
I believe they're down in Irwindale.
Irwindale. So Irwindale learned that the wind blows in Tehachapi. Is that what we're talking about here? The wind blows in Tehachapi. But now that they know the wind blows in Tehachapi, they've empowered the local staff to help them understand the wind patterns, what's going on, and what really matters. It's not like this is new, right? And this is something that we've been fighting.
It's a little more complex than just the wind blowing, obviously. It's really humidity levels and the moisture content.
Sure
of
it
the
is.
fuel.
Sure it is.
And I think, frankly, we've had this discussion that some of the gaps were where our weather stations were. We've increased the number of weather stations in the Tehachapi area to try to tighten that up. As you know, if you look at some of the circuits, they're several miles long.
Right.
And so what's happening on one end of the circuit, may not necessarily be happening on the other. And that's where we've put a lot of work in these circuit action plans and segmenting these circuits to try to isolate to those areas that are truly vulnerable or under risk.
Right. And to the business owner or to the homeowner, they flip their switch and they want the power to go on. But it's so much more complex than that. As you point out, these circuits are sometimes really very large, and you can be at the Tehachapi airport and the wind's blowing, 40 miles an hour, 40 knots, and then go south towards Highline, and it might be, a 5 to 8 mile an hour breeze. But that circuit spans that entire area. So that's tough to deal with. And your investment is appreciated, and your design team and your implementation team and the boots on the ground, they really want to make this right. So we really appreciate those efforts that you have put in.
And one thing I appreciate that, Greg, and one thing I would add to this is a lot of the frustration that we hear is, well, we understood the wind was blowing, it was hot, the humidity levels were low. We kind of understand that you were taking precautions to prevent catastrophic fire. But a lot of the frustration comes on the back end of these types of events where the wind stopped blowing and how come the power doesn't come on? And, what traditionally happens is all of the field crews have to be deployed to get eyes on those circuits to make sure their vegetation didn't blow in the line or a pole didn't snap. And so what we don't want to happen is to have a PSPS event and all that goes along with it, and then re-energize the line and have a fire start because, there's something in the line or a line fell as a result of the wind event. Right. And so it's that back end that can cause some frustration as well. And I just wanted to put that out there because I think it'll help if people understand what the delay is. And it's really to inspect those lines and make sure they're safe to re-energize. And so that's the kind of the gulf there between the event ending and the power coming back on.
So Cal, we've seen the crews, your contractors, your Southern California Edison crews specifically over the last 12 months, even probably before that, doing a lot of work. They're here in the city. They're in the outlying areas. What have been some of the grid hardening efforts that have been underway? And obviously that's not going to prevent it from happening this year, but hopefully in the years to come that could prevent PSPS events. But what have been some of the projects that have been accomplished to kind of help to shore up the grid a little bit and prevent from wildfire?
Well, I will tell you that in the Tehachapi area alone, and this is going back to 2019, so it includes, much of last fire season, SCE and its partners have replaced over 1,100 wooden poles, replacing them with fireproof wrapped wood or composite poles. We've also replaced over 32 miles of bare aluminum overhead wire with covered wire, which will obviously make the grid much more resilient. Additionally, we've installed about 24 micro weather stations on the top of our poles in various locations. And, getting back to our previous conversation about situational awareness, these weather stations will help our internal storm groups in their decision making when it comes to PSPS shutdown. I would also just reference that, while this work won't necessarily impact the city, we did have a discussion a couple of weeks ago. Between the beginning of the month and the end of the month, talking June, we have some 16 covered conductor projects that are going to be completed, and most of these are on the Condor circuit, which will be the Cummings Valley, Stallion, Bear Valley Springs area. One of the big challenges this year, and it's COVID related, is early on we had made the decision, because of stay-at-home orders, that we were going to try to limit the outages that we took to the most critical work, and wildfire mitigation is part of that. Obviously, equipment failure, compliance projects, but we really tried not to have outages last over 4 hours during this period. And I think that was the right thing to do for our customers and your constituents during COVID-19. However, by segmenting these projects, it created some inefficiencies. And so as these poles have been replaced, as the cross arms have been replaced, and we get some of that preliminary work done, we are now at a point to where these covered conductor projects, we need to get moving on those, particularly since wildfire season is officially started. And those are going to require some longer outages. And we'll have our normal customer communication. We're pushing out good neighbor letters, and we're working with the current Office of Emergency Services to try to get ahead of any potential problems. And so that's just a high level. Specific to Tehachapi, I would just want to bring up, and everybody on this call is very familiar with the impacts of de-energizing the Viento circuit. We do have a project that is in scope now that will add covered conductor from Beach on the east, and La Colina on the west along Valley Boulevard. And this is to try to harden that section of the grid and within the high fire risk areas, or the Bulletin 322 areas that we all commonly refer to it as insiders. And we're hopeful that this will allow us to switch beyond and kind of isolate that business community area. I would just say that, as we have talked about before, we're naturally going to want to see how this covered conductor performs in wind events. And so there may be a bit of a lag. But in response to the town halls and the numerous conversations that we've had with Greg and the rest of the city staff, we did take action to try to do some work on the Viento to address your concerns.
During that PSPS, when the Viento circuit went down, I mean, there was no gas stations and no markets. And so the folks that were in the outlying areas or in the city, they didn't have resources to be sustainable.
Get gas, groceries, etc. Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a relief to know that at least that business area, that corridor that can provide services, whether you've got power or not, wherever you live. Like I'm out in Bear Valley, so I went 4 days without power at a time. At least I know I can come to the city and take care of things that I need to take care of, get some hot food.
Well, I think that was a lot of the confusion and then frustration. You live in Bear Valley or Stallion or Golden Hills, certain areas where it's a lot of grassland, trees, you might expect the power to go out. But in the city, the power goes out, whenever there's a lightning storm or somebody hits a power pole or something. It's not because of a PSPS event, but we learned that these circuits are so broad and they're spanning so many square miles, if you will, and affecting so many people. So as SCE continues to move forward, we support the hardening of the circuits. We want to help you with your communications. Anything that the city of Tehachapi can do. I don't care if it's in the city or if it's in the community. The area you just described, actually, between Beach and Las Colinas, that's actually a county island. I don't know if you knew that or not, Cal, but it all matters, right? We all live in the 93561, and we want to support all of those efforts so we can just get this done, check the box, and move on, and have a grid that's reliable.
And on your point, while that segment is a county island, it does feed that whole business district over there. So that's why the focus is on that segment. And on your offer to help with communication, obviously we appreciate that. I think that one thing that we'll have to work through with staff is, when you do broad outage communication, oftentimes you will get calls from people that aren't affected by the outage, which is why we try to target specific, customers directly. But I think when we have large-scale initiatives like we have going on now, I think we could do some high-level communication. So we'll commit to working with you on that.
Especially with the improved mapping. With the mapping, that was kind of a lot of confusion last year in that we weren't talking the same language. We might be saying the same name, but that actually wasn't the case of the map that you should have been talking about. So I know you guys have that sorted out. You went through your mapping of our region and found there was some overlap, there was some mislabeling, and that's all been updated, right?
That has. We went through and reviewed, I believe it was 1,300 circuits to make sure that, they were coded to the right regions. And obviously, some of those discrepancies were brought to our attention very early on in the process. And so I think most of that was resolved during, last year's fire season.
Yeah, and I get it. The city of Tehachapi is 120, 130 years old, and we have old infrastructure, whether it's water or sewer. And sometimes we'll find a water line like, wow, who knew that was there, right? And so that's no excuse. It's just reality. And as we get better, we can map things and we can understand our infrastructure in all aspects of our business better to serve the customer better.
Well, Cal, let me ask you this, being a Bear Valley resident myself, and I know there's folks listening in Stallion and Bear Valley. As I come into work, I see 30, 40 guys coming in, SCE contractors, multiple trucks, these composite poles, the insulated line. It's being installed. What kind of, should I expect hope on a lessened impact if I'm in the outside of the city area? Is there going to be less, or is it the infrastructure need to be completed before I'm going to be seeing a multiple day, outage? I know the weather, is a big factor, but as far as the infrastructure hardening, is that going to lessen some of these outages?
Well, I think I would answer the question a bit with a bit of nuance. I think the frequency of PSPS events, like we're hopeful that they will fall, but I think the frequency is the wrong way of looking at it. I think as a result of our grid hardening efforts and our ability to further segment circuits, I think what you will see is a drop in the number of customers that are impacted. I just spoken to you about all of the work we're going to do on the Condor, which will affect Bear Valley pretty hard. And I will tell you, our folks are in conversations with the Community Services District up there to make sure that we're communicating on this work and that their critical facilities are taken into account as we move forward on these projects. So, the short answer to your question is yes, but I would caution that I would anticipate not necessarily a drop in the frequency, but a drop in the amount of customers that are impacted.
Okay.
And I know that, whenever this first started, a year and a half ago or so, we started learning what PSPS and what the heck's going on here. We had help from Assemblyman Fong, Senator Grove, SCE, the city of everybody came together because we understood quickly we got to change what's happening here. We need grid hardening. We need better communications. And so I just want to applaud everybody that was involved because we all came together. We didn't fight and scream. We just understood, okay, we got to figure this out and figure it out quick. That's exactly what we're doing. That's what we're doing right here. We want to make sure that we're pushing information out to people so that they understand better what's going on. So the Facebook crowd doesn't fill in the blanks, right? We want people to know.
Right. Hey, Cal, we've got the virtual town hall coming up on June 24th, and we want people to also sign up for the alerts if they haven't done so already on SCE.com. Is there anything else that you'd like to add or something we didn't ask that you think that we probably should touch on?
Well, I would just say that, and this will be covered at the 24th virtual town hall meeting, but there are rebates and programs, again, on our website that I gave you. There's self-generation incentive programs, rebates for whole home energy storage, which is the ultimate microgrid, correct? There's $50 rebates for small appliances and device battery backup. There's $300 to $500 generator rebates for well and water dependent customers. And probably most importantly, because our critical care customers are really the focus here, particularly during PSPS events or any other event, earthquakes or weather events. And so there is a fully subsidized critical care customer battery backup, and that's income qualified. Originally, we had that set up to be full service, where we'd come to your home, assess your needs. If you had medical equipment that you needed to be back up, we're kind of working through how that's gonna function given COVID-19 and some of the social distancing restrictions. But I think the biggest thing that you've seen change over last year is just a focus on how we can help folks who rely on water wells, how we can, for their domestic water, how we can help critical care customers, the most vulnerable, get through a PSPS event, and then, adding additional mobile crew vehicles, we call them, that can be dispersed to the communities, as well as our community resource centers. I mean, all of that effort was an outgrowth of the conversations in the town halls we had last year. And I would just encourage folks who are listening to this podcast to please, when you get the notification, sign up for that meeting. If you have questions, you can ask questions in advance during the registration process. During the event, if you have questions, you'll have an opportunity to type those in. And then after the meeting, when we do a survey, you will have an additional opportunity to ask questions. Given the reality of year-round fire season, I really encourage people to participate and learn more about what our plans, what services are available to help them get through potential PSPS events, or for that matter, it should be part of the general emergency preparedness as well. So I think these are things we should be doing absent PSPS, and we should always be prepared. But there are several specific programs that we're rolling out, and I think folks should benefit from that.
Excellent. Great information, and hopefully our folks listening feel more informed, and they'll be able to make decisions on what they need to do to prepare their household. So, Cal, thank you for taking the time with us. We greatly appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity, and I truly look forward to the day when we can meet in person.
Thanks, Cal.
I don't know. Speak for yourself, Cal.
Yeah, I don't know.
We'll see.
I kind of missed your smiling face. Well, maybe soon enough.
No, we appreciate it.
I like dealing with you, Greg, even when you're mad at me.
Cal Rossi, Southern California Edison, he has some great information. Myself, I live out in that outlying area, so I know I'm going to have some power outages. Yeah. It's going to happen.
And he hit on that point, which I think was important, and it resonates all year long, really, is be prepared. Right. You know what to expect now with PSPS. Last year was our first year of dealing with it, but with COVID-19, with the earthquakes we've had in the area, you just need to be prepared. So if you want to get a generator, but hook it up properly. Don't be running to Home Depot the day the power goes out and using extension cords and trying to plug your house in. Proper ways to do that. And then you brought up the battery backups. These are things that are actually pretty common in your office, maybe for your computer systems. And what you would do if you're on maybe an oxygen machine or something at night, you plug into that, which plugs into the wall. And then if the power does go out, you will still have, I think it goes like 8 hours worth of power. And so, if you call us on PSPS day and start yelling that you're on oxygen, it's too late at that point. So it's very important. And this, again, the power could go out tonight for, I don't know, what someone hits a pole, as Greg pointed out earlier. Right. So you got to just be prepared, and you kind of have a little bit of a head start this year maybe because we know what to expect. And maybe they'll be a little less frequent, but maybe they won't be. So with everything happening right now, just be prepared and don't have to run out and try to buy a bunch of water when the power goes out.
Are we saying now PSPS events are as common as trains going through our valley? Should we just be prepared?
Be prepared.
Wait for a train, or be prepared for the power to go out? Is that what you just said?
Just throw it on the emergency list. Really.
I think it's true, though. Yeah. Honestly, I mean, you harp on that a lot, right? Government is always saying, "Oh, be prepared, be prepared." But the fact of the matter is, you have to be prepared. You have to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
Government is not going to come to your rescue every time something happens, right? You have to take some responsibility in your own lives. We can only do so much.
We look back over the last year, this year, I mean, we've hit it a few times, but on the emergency preparedness side, when you start with the Ridgecrest earthquakes in July, okay, you've got to make sure that you can take care of yourself because resources are slim. Then it
takes a while for them to get there.
Right.
As Ridgecrest was the case.
And when they asked for backup, it takes a few hours. Yeah. It takes us just to mobilize and go probably an hour and a half to 2 hours early if we got there quick for us to mobilize if we were on duty, during a work day to get up to Ridgecrest. And then if you're bringing in more from Bakersfield and other areas, it's hours before they get the backup.
And then people pick up their cell phones and think, "Oh, I'll just call somebody." Well, maybe your cell phone doesn't work because the towers are down. Right. And there's so many things you need to sit down, take 5 minutes, and just think about what you and your family, what's best for you.
Well, and then when we looked at the PSPS events in October, for myself, I had a couple of days where it was almost 100 hours at a time that we had no power. So we had to make sure that, do you have the generator?
Right.
Like you said, Corey, is it hooked up right? Am I running the right
it's the right
gauge?
size. Yes.
Am I running the right gauge extension cord out of that generator so it doesn't overheat and create a fire?
Yeah.
So you don't overload it. And then you're dealing with, gas or diesel,
propane if you've got other
storing
things.
that.
Correct.
So there's a lot of things that you need. Don't do it at the last minute, like you said. These are things that we train for. It's things like with CERT, the Community Emergency Response Team. You start to train for things and be aware of what you need.
And
what
I think
your
doesn't every
are.
community, the city, Golden Hills, Stony Springs, Bear Valley, there are lots of certs that you can get involved with.
Right.
That doesn't mean you have to go to a meeting, you have to be on their board, and you have to attend a million meetings. They provide training, right? And they'll provide you with some literature that will help guide you so that you don't reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, and the training is all about being able to take care of your household and then checking on a neighbor.
Right.
And then it doesn't mean you have to become a part of the response team and you've got to roll to the CSD headquarters or wherever to be a part of a team. Take care of yourself. If you can take care of yourself, that's one less family that's going to need to be taken care of by law enforcement, public safety. So those are the things that we really encourage you. We've been promoting emergency preparedness for since I've been here for the 3.5, 4 years, and we just find new reasons that we need to make sure. We've had the earthquakes, the PSPS events, even the COVID-19, making sure you've got enough supplies before you go out. You don't want to run dry on anything. And making sure you always have at least half a tank of gas, in your car, just in case the power does go out.
I was going to bring that one up. That was a good one because we saw that one event we had last year where there was literally no gas stations. I think one guy in Old Town had a generator and he hooked it up and was able, but the line was like a 1970s gas line. It went all the way down because nobody was prepared, and he happened to have a generator to be able to run his pumps. But keep that half a tank so you don't get stranded. I knew people that were stranded up here, and I think some of the news organizations that came up here to cover PSPS got up here and went, "Oh, you don't have any gas stations open? We came up here on what we had, and we're almost empty." And I said, "Well, good thing it's downhill." There's really not much we can do at that point.
But we rely on FEMA to get the information. So that's the information that we share to the public. So if you'd like it, you can contact us at media@TehachapiCityHall.com. We'll get you some of the checklists and things you need to think about for your own preparedness. Or you can go to FEMA.gov. You can get that information right online. So there's lots of things to think about, and boy, this last year has just been a crazy.
I'm hoping that July 4th of last year started all this nonsense because we had the earthquakes in Ridgecrest. And then, for us, it's almost been like this what it was a fiscal year, July 1. It just seems like the last 12 months have been nuts starting in July. So my hope is we hit July 1.
Reset.
Maybe things get better. We don't got to wait till January of 2021. Maybe it'll just get better come July of this year.
Are you that naive?
I'm looking for any sense of optimism at this point.
What does tomorrow hold?
Mentally exhausted.
It's hard to even plan now. We're talking about planning, but what does tomorrow hold?
We don't know.
Yeah. Right.
So be ready for anything.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I feel now like I'm ready for anything at this point.
Yeah.
Actually, we're pretty hardened ourselves, aren't we?
Yeah. And I have that, and I have that mental checklist now. I didn't have it before. It's just like that. What's my fuel situation? What's my food situation? And that kind of stuff. My generator power situation. And just kind of keep that in the back of your head. And you think about that now. I didn't think about it before as much, and now it's a regular sort of checklist in my head as we get into fire season and emergencies in general.
I think we covered some great information today. We've got some things that are coming up with July 4th to look forward to. Not only will we have our fireworks display here in town, we've got the special podcast, our salute to the military and veterans, and we invite you to send us your shout-outs. Either send us an email, either Corey, Greg, myself, or we might find another voice or two to share your message, or you can call and leave a recorded message that we will actually play on the show. And you can call 661-822-2200 extension 119. And again, our email is media@TehachapiCityHall.com. Gentlemen, anything you want to throw in before we say goodbye?
Have a good day and be safe.
There you go.
All right, that's enough said. Thank you very much for joining us.
Tehachapod is a conversation about Tehachapi designed for the people who live here or who would like to know more about this mountaintop community. If you have a question you would like answered, email media@tehachapicityhall.com. We will try to answer it on a future episode of Tehachapod.